Like, because if you think you're not going to be well, you won't. And when you have that mindset, and you can visualize the things that you want to have happen into your life health wise, it was easy to follow that path.
Welcome to the good life.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Good Life Visual Audio Podcast, where we talk all things health and wealth. I'm one of your hosts, C. Muzan. I got Coach Kobi in the building. Say what up, Coach.
What up, though? And guys, I don't have my mic today, so I can stretch it out a little bit. Doe! It is a pleasure to be with you guys today, reporting all the way live from Costa Rica, but we don't miss episodes. So excited to be here because it's going to be a great episode.
It definitely is. We could not, we needed you to be on this one because we got a real special guest for you guys today. So continue to stick around. But Coach just told you he's out there in Costa Rica. Coach, what do you want to tell the people? Like, what you out in Costa Rica for? Like, how things rolling out there?
Absolutely, absolutely. So this was a gift from my wife in a lot of ways to spend a week up here in the mountains of Escazú, uh, getting treatment from a good friend of mine who is also an acupuncturist and an elite martial artist and mover. I've been having a few things I wanted to consult with him on, and sometimes you just got to go in person. So I'm here for my birthday week and getting daily treatment from him and daily movement practice from him up in the mountains, and it's been quite the experience, man. It's been really really cool to be out here. So it kind of also takes me back to my roots. Costa Rica reminds me a little bit more of Ghana, where what many of you know, I was born. The fruits, the weather, right? Not so much the language, but but it's been a lot of fun, man. But I'm excited to be on here with you guys today.
That's so awesome, man. It's a blessing to get a chance to experience other cultures, experience other parts of the world, and do it for the right reasons and like not just drinking your life away and right,
Right.
like damaging your body. You're actually going the other direction
Right.
and taking care of yourself even more so.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Hey, and guys, we're not here to necessarily judge anyone's lifestyle, but we
yes,
are
we are.
here to, oh man, to say, I think when we think vacation, there's a certain image of vacation, and it's like going crazy and wild, or like reading a book on the beach. They can be somewhere in the middle where we can do active things to restore our energy, to restore our health. And I have found that it's probably my favorite way to travel. Like, you can still do a lot of fun things, but coming back truly rejuvenated and not needing vacation from your vacation, I think that's a good sign.
Big deal. It's a big deal, man. Let's keep moving this along. I really want us to get to our guests. Thanks for everybody that's tuning in again to another episode of the Good Life Visual Audio Podcast. If you want more, you can catch us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all your favorite streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can also join our mailing list to stay up to date with all things related to the good life. It's where our community for self-improvement will get even more resources, tips, freebies on improving your health and wealth. So make sure you click the link in the description. Instagram will get it to you, but it'll be in this description as you're watching this. Quick note, quick ad from our sponsor.
Let's do it, guys. Ready to level up your style? The Good Life Visual Audio Podcast store just dropped its first piece of merch, our exclusive Follow the Money t-shirt. And it's not just clothing, but a statement of your commitment to mastering your health and your wealth. So be part of the movement and get yours today. Just go ahead and visit the store or click the link in our description. And remember to always follow the money.
That's awesome. Our next segment we call Shop Talk. We're gonna keep it kind of short, but I know that this guy has something that he has to talk about when it comes to those Detroit Lions.
That's right. That's right.
So
Listen, shop. First of all, I got it from you, Chris. I got it from
thank
you.
you.
First of all, Chris wants to keep this short because he conveniently was very incorrect with his picks last week.
I like Dougal's pick. I'm going with the Packers. Shout out Wheezy F baby. Yeah, I got to go with the Lions on this one. Not just because of coach, but because I can't root for the people that beat the Eagles. Like, I'm actually going Houston. I'm gonna stick with the Houston pick. I'm gonna go with the Bills, man. I think it's a storyline.
So I may or may not have had all four of my picks go through.
All right. 49ers. Dougal's crazy. Y'all already know who I'm going with. Roar, baby. All day. Gotta go with my main man here. Again, the progression of the black quarterback in the NFL. I love to see it. Shout out Lamar. I'm going with the Chiefs here, but I think this is going to be the most exciting game out of all of them.
And Chris didn't.
You missed.
I want to shout out the city of Detroit because that is truly America's city. If you look at the adversity that the city of Detroit has had to overcome in the last 40 plus years to get to where they are today, I believe the Detroit Lions are a beacon of hope that if you keep on going, if you keep on doing the right things, putting the right people in place and taking the actions that you need to take, like we talked about on the show, you too will win 2 playoff games like the Detroit Lions. Shout out. And I'll keep it there for now out of respect for our guests, but I got you next week because the Detroit Lions are beating the 49ers, and I'm calling that here today. Let's go.
Funny enough, our guest, we didn't actually know this. She just let us know she is actually from the great city of Detroit. So
I don't believe in coincidences. I believe God talks.
Clearly. Yeah, I think in all honesty, bro, without further ado, we gotta bring her up. Let's get a chance to introduce our guest. One, because I know that now she's from Detroit and you guys are gonna hit it off a ton because you're gonna talk about some of those things, I'm sure. But also because this you dealing in Costa Rica with your health, and right, we're bringing on a guest that is fully immersed in the health space. So let's bring her up. A quick introduction. Today we're excited to have on executive consultant and coach Dr. Pat Boulogne. Dr. Pat's journey is a testament to her unwavering commitment to the well-being of individuals. Originally retired and residing in Boston, she was drawn back into action by a profound realization of the impact of environmental toxins on people's health. The catalyst for her mission was a CDC study revealing the alarming presence of over 212 suspected dangerous chemicals in the blood and urine of most Americans, with an estimated 50% projected to be diagnosed with chronic diseases by 2030. Sounds familiar, yes? With a robust background, Dr. Pat holds a bunch of different degrees, and it looks like I'm going to let her explain some of those. But today we're going to dive into her unique approach to health and wellness, exploring the intersections of functional medicine, lifestyle solutions, traditional Chinese medicine, and more. So without further ado, please welcome Dr. Pat to the show. There she is. Hey, Dr. Pat, welcome to the show.
Go Detroit.
That's right. That is right.
What an
I had
awesome game
no
that was,
idea.
wasn't it?
It was fantastic. And I'm so
Oh,
happy for the city of Detroit. And
mhm.
like I said, America's city, America's team right there.
Oh, for sure. It's just like when I tuned into it, and I finally got someplace just before halftime, and I just went, "Wow, my boys are doing really good again."
Absolutely.
I was absolutely thrilled to see that because they have worked so hard year after year after year, and they've been dedicated, they've been focused, and they kept on persevering, and they kept on moving it forward. And this year they superseded all expectations. So I'm going with them against the 49ers.
As
How
as
about
I
you?
Yeah, how about you, Chris?
I
What do
don't
you think?
know. I don't know. I don't know. I mean,
You're
you know,
outvoted.
I know clearly I'm outvoted. I'm an Eagles fan, Dr. Pat, because
Why,
I'm
why
from.
why would you say that with any sort of
Listen,
confidence?
relax, okay, relax. I just wanted her to understand that it's hard for me to pick any NFC teams, right? Just because I'm an Eagles fan, but at the end of the day, Detroit has done a great job this season, and they most likely will take this game versus the
Hmm.
49ers as well. So keep the streak going.
Good vibes.
That's right. Good vibes. Good vibes. Well,
Yep.
Dr. Pat, we appreciate you jumping on the show. Again, introduce yourself to the audience. Introduce yourself, like kind of a little bit of the background. Can you share more about kind of the journey and kind of how you got into the position that you're in now?
Sure. My father, one time when I told him I didn't want to go to college, thought it would be a really great idea to hop in the car because I lived in the suburbs, and go hop in the car. And we decided we're going to go to Detroit and have something to eat. And I thought, I can't believe he's so agreeable that I don't want to go to college. And so we get in the car, we're driving in, and we get off at the exit for Old Tiger Stadium. And so we pull into that area and he just pulls down the street and he said, "Get out of the car." And I said, "Why is that?" He goes, "Because if you don't go to college, this is where you're going to live." And that was like where the riot started in 67. And so I go, there's no way in God's green earth I'm getting out of this car. And so I go, I'll go to the college of your choice. So I went to college. I went to Eastern Michigan University, and I really had I've always had an inclination for science. And all my classes were all pre-med by accident. It's just the classes that I was interested in. And then a friend of mine said, "You should go to chiropractic school." And I was working in the hospital, University of Michigan Hospital at the time. And I realized that nobody that was in there was going to leave there healthy except for people who were in the maternity ward. And they were the only people that were happy. And it was depressing. Like every time I got out of work and I came down as my independent study. Um, and then shortly around that same time, my friend going to school said, "You should do this." And I said, "I don't want to do it, be a chiropractor. I mean, they're quacks, right?" And so, but I hurt my shoulder in when this waitress job that I had, and I went to see this chiropractor. And I thought, man, if this guy can do it, so can I, and I can do it better. And so I, called my friend up. I said, "I'm coming. I'm coming to school." And I never looked back. It was such an awesome experience to see people be able to get into that headspace of being well. In like, because if you think you're not going to be well, you won't. And when you have that mindset, and you can visualize the things that you want to have happen in your life health wise, it was easy to follow that path. And I had some really wonderful mentors in chiropractic. And also, I have an acupuncture degree. Also, I have a master's in Oriental medicine, and I'm also a licensed acupuncturist in many states. So putting all those pieces of the puzzle together was so cool because they're like, "Oh, that's why the Chinese study this, we study this, and this is how it coincides, and this is the reason why it works so well." So it was really one of those, like, when you're funneling in, you're making something, you're looking at all the ingredients, go, "I don't get this." And then when it comes out, you have the perfect cake.
That's huge. That's huge.
And so, and that was really cool. I have seen and witnessed people like very, very sick, like coming in with the flu, kind of thing. And as I always told them to come in because I had a remedy for it. And then leaving and calling me 2 hours later to go, "Man, I haven't felt this good in years." And so it was just really great to to trigger in and like type into the body, so to speak, what it is that they wanted to have and where they're at, and then give a great plan in order to go from point A to point C. But it was really
That's
cool.
that's awesome. That's
Mhm.
awesome. Uh, Take me back from chiropractic. How did we get into Oriental medicine? Like, was it that the mentors pointed you in that direction, or like how'd you go that direction?
Well, not really. I was getting divorced, and my I was going to go to law school, and I studied for the LSATs, and I did really well on them, except that my husband pulled he sidestepped something, which totally sidestepped my ability to go to law school. So I started going back into things that I always had an interest in, and so I started looking at going to, acupuncture school and studying herbs. And one thing I found out about that same time is that I had an ancestor who was the apothecary to the House of Bourbon in France in the 1600s. And my girlfriend used to say to me all the time, she goes, "See, I told you the DNA doesn't change." 400 400 years, it doesn't change. As it's always been my interest because it's like the whole concept of the food is the medicine, and if we respect and if we have a better understanding about what we're putting in our body and why we're putting it in our body, we can make better choices. And we do that, we have better health.
That's huge.
Yeah. But that's how one got into the other was that pivot.
The pivot, right? The life changes.
hmm
That's what happens.
Yep, for sure.
Dr. Pat, I want to follow up on that a little bit. You mentioned putting the pieces together, all right, and that's something I'm very interested in, and I think it's very clear that we don't have the pieces together, particularly when we look at the entire Western medical system. Can you talk a little bit about what do you see as those pieces? Because coming from a chiropractic background, adding acupuncture, I mean, that is quite an impressive resume. And to put those two together, I know very few individuals that have done that. So what are the pieces and what is that whole cake that you're talking about? Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. I think that one of the big things is that people don't understand where their basic foundation is. As if you don't know what you've got to work with, then you got a problem because you're doing hit and miss. Like, oh, I want to take melatonin because I want to go to sleep. Well, melatonin offsets other things and chemicals in your body. So you have to be really mindful about, when you take it, how to take it, and make sure that you take it on an empty stomach. It's one of those things. So there's that one piece. I teach 5 pillars of health, and the 5 pillars of health that I have for people to have that awareness about where they are basically in their health is the first one is nutrition and having proper nutrition and proper diet because they have to coincide. You can have a bad diet, but you can't have good nutrition. They have to be, hand in hand and folded together. And the other piece that I teach is about exercise and having proper exercise and moving. Another piece is proper sleep. Another piece is positive mental attitude and positive mindset. You have to have that combination of those two in order to be able to be successful with the nutrition and the diet and the sleep. Because a lot of times, when people get sick, there's 3 basic reasons that people get sick, and that's because of trauma, thoughts, and also toxins. And then the last piece is having a properly functioning nervous system, which relates to a proper posture and proper biomechanics. So when you have if you have that linked together and they're all pieces of the pie, then they're all important. But for me, I used to think that they're all equal. But I don't think that anymore. I think the mindset is huge because you can control pain by controlling your thoughts. You can control how well you digest your food. We all have had those situations where we were upset when we ate dinner. We never went to sleep that night. And people, don't have a way to calm their mind. So it gives us that idle chatter that keeps on going. And then if you factor in how the brain works in relationship to that mindset, where you have the primitive brain, the mammalian brain, and the conscious brain, and the primitive brain is always trying to derail you because it's always trying to save you. It's food fornication. It's the fight or flight. And it doesn't want you to, sometimes to see this. Someone is like, oh, you're not worthy enough. Just don't worry about it. Don't even try, because that primitive brain is so ingrained into our very essence. And so that primitive brain, if you can control the conversation the primitive brain's having, you can control outcomes. And then the mammalian brain is the part of the brain that controls all your emotions, whether they're good or bad. Every experience that you have gets registered in the mammalian brain. So if you see like a person who looks like somebody who you can't stand, immediately your body reacts in the same fashion and it stores all that negative stuff in the same place as that was stored. So in order to change that, you really have to change the input. You have to take from the negative, the painful portion into something positive. And so when the mammalian brain is being talked to from the conscious brain, that's what we're talking in right now. Like, I am healthy, I am active, I am vital, successful human being. That consciousness and that affirmation will override if you keep on saying it again, because it will believe it. Eventually it will believe it and you will be successful. Look at the Detroit Lions. you know? And so, it's just
Beautiful
like,
title.
because, it's like they're, because, they at one point in time couldn't get out of their own way. And sometimes we have the experience in our lives. We can't get out of our own way. We have a black cloud that somehow, some way it got over my head or your head or whoever. It's just like, you got to disperse it. You got to put enough heat on it so that it blows away and enough
Yeah.
wind. And we do that with our health too, because we have, these preconceived conditions like, oh, like, well, it was in my genetics for my family. So if somebody has heart disease in my family, it means I'm going to have it. That's not true because not everybody in your family has heart disease. But if you keep on eating the way that your parents ate and eat the same kind of foods, and you have to realize too, a lot of our parents had better food than we have in this day and time. And so, it's just like, I don't see, there's a lot of people that I know whose parents are living into their 90s and doing pretty well, and we're going to see a change in that where that number comes down, and having people having that good part of their life, because of poor choices, lifestyle choices.
Sure.
And not questioning the status quo. It's like, what's in that? Why is that in it? Why does Heinz ketchup in the UK only have about 8 ingredients and the one in the United States have 20? I don't understand that, and so it's just like, if you're making it, isn't it like, it's not cost efficient to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, but we have so many toxins in the United States. I just drove up and you talk about toxins, because toxins are like the air that you breathe, the water you drink, the food that you eat, right? I'm driving up from Florida and I'm moving up to Richmond. And at one point in time, I think I counted 40 chemtrails in the sky. And I'm thinking, they're killing us. And because they're loaded with like barium and a lot of really heavy metals. And it's hard to escape in this environment that we have, not having those metals around. And they all lead to chronic illness and disease. So that statistic, of 50% of the population is pretty probable, given what we have going. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely. And Dr. Fab, I mean, so many questions here for you, but I want to backtrack a little bit and kind of take it one by one. So you mentioned the 5 areas of health that you teach, which resonate with me a lot.
Right.
And anybody that's watched the show will attest to that. But you made an interesting statement in that you used to believe they were all equal, but now you don't. You're looking at mindset, and I'll say, self-image mindset. Is that kind of what you're talking about? But also, what you mentioned, people don't have tools, right, to deal with that or to, let's say, regulate their nervous system, right? What tools do you suggest or do you use with your folks that you work with, or for someone that's listening now and it's like, that makes a lot of sense. So what do I do about that?
Well, I meditate. And I project what I want to have happen. So some woman told me that I was coaching one time. She was from California, and she just said, "Dr. Pat, you should change your tagline." And I said, why is that?" She said, she goes, "You are the grace magnet." And it was kind of like, and I thought about it as, when I go out, I don't think about bad things are going to happen. Like I drove a car up here and my American Express said, don't sign off on the insurance. And this person was like, oh, and I one time, blah, blah, blah. And I just said, I don't think that way. I don't think that is a possibility. Could it happen? Maybe. But it's not, it's just like you're being aware of your environment around you is so important, and being aware of what you eat, what you think, is huge, and so when you have control of that, you have much more control of your environment. So the thing that I talk to people about is like meditating, projecting what you want to have happen. And so that you can say like, okay, so is that feasible? Is that reasonable? Because if it's feasible and reasonable, even if it's on the edge of not, it's possible.
Mm.
And if you go into someplace thinking that I'm going to have a bad experience, everything bad could possibly happen to you will happen to you.
Sure.
And it's just like when, my parents used to say you shouldn't go downtown Detroit because we all know Detroit really had a bad moment, and it's just like I still got on the bus.
Had. What do you mean had? No, I'm joking.
Hey, calm
I'm
down
joking.
there,
I'm
Philly.
joking.
Calm down there,
I
Philly.
know. I know. I'm outnumbered on this show. So.
Well,
Yeah.
well, it's just like you have a friend of mine who lives, downtown Detroit, which like in an area that would remind you of someplace that Frank Lloyd Wright would live, right? The
Mm,
the way the bricks and like the old part of Detroit, the one that's still there, like the old mansions, they were spectacular in their day.
mm.
And in Detroit, I mean, nobody can beat, what is it called? Grand Circus. It's just like they have, it's almost like being in Key West. I mean, when you're if you're hanging out downtown Detroit in that area. But anyway, I used to, I never let that, that thought process, even to this day, I never let that interfere with what I want to do. And
So
so I
the
try to teach people that same concept that,
mm,
it's like, what is it about it that you want? Like you went to Costa Rica, right? And
mm,
you went down there and there's a lot of body workers and there's a lot of people who do nutrition. There's a lot of like, you can go hang out with the monkeys, if you want to, or else they'll find you. And there's water. I mean, everywhere that it's really, very magical, to be in that environment and to be in the jungle, and have
yeah,
such incredible fresh air. And so like, when you go there, you're just thinking, you want to take advantage of everything that has to offer and also come back being relaxed when you're from vacation, you know?
absolutely.
And so because you don't want to come back needing a vacation, as you said, from your vacation. And so, there's, when I used to take vacations in my office, I used to take off 3 weeks and I would put, the first week I just needed to decompress. The second week I got acclimated, and the third week I could breathe.
Mm,
And so when I came back, it was, and it's also that mindset, you have to take Leonardo da Vinci says you have to go far enough away from your environment so
mhm,
that you have something that so you desensitize to where you're at,
absolutely.
and nobody has a pulse on you, and set yourself. And then you can release a lot of stuff that's going on with you, no matter where, no matter even if it's, you're going to the next neighborhood, you just don't see anybody that you know for a week. Um,
Yeah.
and you are very mindful of the triggers for it. So, the people who I love to work with, I always like, what's possible? Tell me what you want to do, and I'll tell you how to get there. I'm a problem solver. And I like to create solutions. I'm driven by solutions. And I like to take people from like, just tell me what it is, and I'll tell you how to do it. The question is, are you willing to do what it takes to be healthy?
That's
And
the
if you're
question.
right, and also, are you into longevity? And just thinking like, what is it? What's the number? Like David Asprey says that he wants to live to be 150. And I don't know if I want to do that, but I'm thinking 120 looks good. 21. Um, and so I understand that concept, of that, but you've got to think it here. Your brain's powerful, and it can make you sick. I mean, people talk to themselves all the time, so you want to if you're going to talk to yourself, be nice, say the things that you need to say in order to go forward.
That brain piece, going back there a little bit more, you talk about it being the thing that kind of rules the rest of the five
Hmm.
areas. It's interesting because Paul Chek, I don't know if you're familiar with Paul Chek, but he has a similar
Hmm.
concept that he talks about. And you also mentioned how the different aspects of our environment, both internal and external environment, kind of dictate or influence, right? How that
Hmm.
mindset is functioning. Now, there are a lot of aspects that we can't control. If you were born in downtown Detroit, for example, right? There's a lot of aspects that you can't control. That's where you were born. There probably isn't, a ton of just sprawling nature everywhere, right? And you
Hmm.
may not have the ability to leave that environment. You talked about toxins being sprayed down upon us, and you probably pretty hard to escape all of that stuff. So one
Hmm.
question I get a lot, and I deal with a lot, is with all the things that you quote unquote cannot control, what are the things that we can control in terms of not dealing with toxins, right? But also setting that mindset up so that it can overcome these things that you may not be able to control.
Well, there's a, I want, when you were just talking, there's the Urban Nutcracker is a play production and ballet production that is put on in Boston, Massachusetts every year. And the guy who puts it on, his name is Tony. I cannot think of his last name, but he grew up in the hood. And he says, I how I met him is I rented from him during the very beginning of the pandemic. I was supposed to be working in his neighborhood, and everything got canceled. But I got to have a great conversation with him, and he told me that every one of his friends, from the hood, they're all dead.
Mm.
And they all passed on. But someone took him and made him go dance because he was a great dancer. He would dance on the street, and they put him in. He finally ended up getting accepted by Juilliard. Somebody took an interest in his abilities, and then he has this great dance studio that is in the suburbs of Boston. And it's just like it really takes somebody to believe in you. When someone believes in you, there you can start to move the pieces of the puzzle in a forward direction. And stop taking everything so personal, for sure. And that, but I just thought it was interesting when you said that. I just remembered him like from, it was an immediate visualization of this guy.
Yeah.
You just mentioned, like talking about the pieces of that puzzle, and another piece of the puzzle for someone to put together is like, what do you have control of? You have control of your thoughts, and you have control of what you put in your mouth. And you can look at, if you're looking at an ingredient and you can't read, you don't understand, you can't pronounce it. There's ingredients I can't pronounce either. I just think, who made this word up? It's like way too many, syllables in here. And, but but when you look at that, and it's like, if you can't pronounce it, it probably isn't good for you. If you just want a general rule. And it's just thinking, like when you're eating your meals, it's just like, what can I gravitate towards? What can I drink? Well, you can drink water, you know, and you can try to get water that's not out of the tap because that has neurotoxins in it. You have to be hydrated. You can't think well, feel well, and move well without water. Any athlete, when you see those guys on they're always having someone like, squirting water down their throat. So the hydration component of that's important. So you can control what you eat. And then it's just like, you have to take a look at like, how do you feel after you eat? We all
Mhm.
know that on
Mhm.
Thanksgiving, we all want to go take a nap, for sure, because there's is food that you don't ever eat, and a lot of it is comfort food. And I have a belief system about comfort food that it's okay to break a rule, it's okay to sin, so to speak, but don't do it often.
Right.
Make sure that you're in control of your environment, and of your thoughts. And so if you start to think a thought, like a negative thought, you can just tell yourself to stop and like actually take your hand and push that energy away, or use the word cancel, because your brain will listen. It's your conscious tongue is stronger than the primitive brain. And so you have to ask yourself, does this feel right?
Yeah.
Is this the right thing to do? Is this the right thing to eat? And if you started having these experiences where you're listening more to your intuition and you don't know because in case you don't know enough about nutrition or know enough about meditation, you can just sit down and close your eyes, and count from 100 backwards.
Yeah.
And that can put you into a state to where you're using a good part of your brain, which is called the alpha brain, in the alpha state, which is by far much more productive.
That's good.
And so when you can get in that, if crap hits the fan, then you don't have to be so reactive,
Yeah.
Mm.
Dr. Pat,
you know?
this is really good stuff. Here on the show, we talk a lot about just the awareness of, again, your thoughts, the awareness of what you're consuming, how it's making you feel, all that stuff that you just said. We talk about that a lot around, designing your ideal life, or, coach says designing a life you don't need a break from, right? Like it's really starts
Hmm.
with a level of awareness of what's happening around you and what you're consuming and what's going on in your mind. So it's just good to hear, right? Another person saying those things, and anyone that's listening, right? Just know this is the stuff we've been talking about for a long time. So it's good to hear someone else say the exact same things, because if you can be aware of these thoughts, push away those thoughts, be aware of what you're consuming, how it's making you feel, be in touch with your body. That's when you're on the path, right, to getting to that good life. So
Hmm.
yeah, thank you for those things, because
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah, I
And
always want
Chris,
people to live their best, and have their best. So
yeah,
if you can see it, some guy when I was in chiropractic school asked me where I was going to go practice, and I went, "Oh, I don't know." And he said, can you see yourself practicing?" And I said, at that point in time, I had like, no, not really. And he said, well, and then he took me to clinic with him in the downtown clinic in Atlanta, Georgia. And this is in 81. And so when I went down there, and I was watching people adjust, I'm thinking, well, I can do that, and the guy who was he was the clinic director down there. He taught such a really great lesson one day because we were all sitting there waiting for our patients to come in, and this one guy's patient didn't come. And so he said, well, what are you going to do about it? And he said, I guess I'm just gonna, wait for my next patient. And he said, is that what you would do in your own office? And he said, no. He goes, well, what'd you do in your own office? He goes, I'd call them up. He goes, then get off your seat and go call them up. And he tell them they can still come. They still have a little bit. We're here for another 2 more hours. And he said, but he goes, we're here for another 2 more hours. If you don't want to see them, somebody else can, in case you have to leave. And that's what I thought. It was such a great lesson because when, I had opened my practice with my husband, we had, underserved practice. And our rule was that if you're in pain, the answer was never no. You don't have to wait, like 2 days, 3 days, a week. And some offices had you do. It's just like you came in that day, and so that you could get taken care of because sharing that love and sharing that human touch, is healing in and of itself.
Sure.
But I believe if you can see it, if you believe it, you can have it.
Good.
that makes a lot of sense. Kind of going back to what you guys both said, it's really interesting because my current book I'm reading right now is about exclusively the brain,
Hmm.
and covers a lot of the stuff that we're talking about here. And one concept that sticks out to me quite a bit is, you know, we attribute a lot of these things to religious practices, right? Praying and things of that nature. But when you really look at it and you start to break it down, really what it's coming down to is asking the right questions of the quote unquote God brain, right? Asking the
Hmm.
right questions so that whatever you believe in, it's not really a belief in, but you will get the right answers. So
Hmm.
instead of making sort of demands, right, it's more so of cultivating, okay, what is the right question here to ask? I was curious if both of you guys actually had thoughts on that, or if you've come across that in your studies.
Well, I have, I wrote a book, and I wrote a second edition of it, and that's where Chris actually quoted the piece about, finding the 212 potentially dangerous chemicals.
Hmm.
And the book is a book of questions, and what the book of questions asks you is it asks you about each organ system in your body. And I've had people tell me my doctor's never asked me that. And so, in writing about the book of questions that found, the book is called Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired? You know, and what it does is it directs you to, it works as a guidebook, an advocating tool, and a workbook so you can see what the pattern of your health is at any given time. And so when you do that, you know where to focus and put your resources, your time, your energy, into like, what do I have to foster and what do I have to just maintain in order to maintain even better health. And when you can create that balance and harmony in that, you express better health. You're much more aware of your situation with that.
Hmm.
So, when you speak to we talked earlier, and I'm going to keep on going back to it because we're talking about that's a piece of the puzzle that's super important. And to have that understanding of that. Does that
That's
make
big.
sense?
Yeah, it makes
Yeah.
perfect
Yep.
sense. Makes perfect sense.
Okay.
Chris, a little bit of not a little bit of a tangent, but kind of a follow up to that. Is Dr. Pat, how would you define health, fitness, vitality, and performance? Do you see those as the same things, overlapping, completely separate? How would you define those words?
I think they're integral to each other.
Mm.
I think that, health is not just, it's not, a stationary thing. It's constantly in motion. And as people are always, trying to be as young as possible. And that's great, because if you want to be as young as possible, you need to remove all toxins in your system and you need to remove toxins in your environment as much as possible. So then you have more of an opportunity to express better health. And health isn't the absence of disease or infirmities. A matter of fact, it has a mindset, and it has a value to it. The not the CDC, but the WHO organization said that back like in 1986. And so they only updated it because they said that, health is an item per se that everybody's entitled to. But you have to understand that, that vitality, that, the is being like I always say the health is being on your game 24/7, 7 days a week, you know, and every minute, 365 days a year, mind, body, and spirit. But when you don't have balance, then you're going to have a hiccup somewhere along the line. The idea is to pay attention to the hiccup when the hiccup happens the first time and not wait till it becomes a crisis,
That's
whether
huge.
physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially, and or financially. Nobody runs a business, for instance, and they don't wait like, oh, let's have a crisis first before we try to figure out what it is and let's fix it. Nobody
Yes.
does that. So it's just like if, and people, in their health should treat it more like that business because they don't want to have that crisis to come up or they want to minimize the potential outcome. And then you have to decide, how can I do that?
Yeah.
And it's
Preventative.
right. Preventative.
Yeah. I did pick up a little feedback. I don't know what happened, but it's okay. That's the preventative side. And again, we talk a lot about that.
Mhm.
Kind of going down that same path, Dr. Pat, like what do you see as the biggest problem in American healthcare? Like what do you see right now as the biggest problem?
I think people are complacent.
Mm.
And I think with that complacency comes like, oh, I should have known it. Or and people are, when people are told diagnosed, even years ago, like when I was at the University of Michigan Hospital, I walked down the cancer ward and one day and this guy was shuffling. And I said, I haven't met you. He goes, it's okay. I'm going to die in 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
I went, excuse me. He goes, they just told me, he goes, my cancer's not, I'm probably going to die in 6 weeks. I said, do you believe that? And
Mm.
he said, well, they said so. And I said, do you believe it though? I mean, it doesn't matter what they said. I said, but do you believe it? And he said, I don't know. Do you think I should believe it? I think you should ask your inside self what you believe. But if that's true, then I go, this is the last place I would ever be for 6 weeks if it was my last 6 weeks, University of Michigan Hospital.
Absolutely.
And so I got fired that day because that guy, after I saw him and left, and I secretly smiled, so they say, you can't tell people things like that. And I said, like what? I just told him what I would do, and he goes, well, he checked out. I'm thinking, yes. And
Yes.
because at least he got to do something that he always wanted to do. I mean, so many of us carry around scars from our childhood and from relationships of things that we learned the wrong way. And if you don't take care of that emotional component and ixnay it, not get rid of it, isn't like you've got to like excommunicate it from your body and your mind and the such, but get it and put it in a safe place so that when things happen, like emotionally happen again and again, you got to go, why am I hitting the ceiling? Why am I hitting the wall again? maybe it's time to get help from an appropriate person that can help work through that one piece that can change the rest of your life and the trajectory of which way that you want to go. So when you get to the end of the street and you have a choice to go right or left, you kind of feel it and you know which way to go. And if things like that recreate, because I work a lot with people that have had those situations, and then my favorite moment is when they get it and their face is like, oh yeah. I said, you never have to experience that ever again. It's a choice. And it's so great to see that because their health changes, their tone of their face, their so many things in their all aspects of their life change, like who they associate with, what kind of verbiage that they use, like how they address the day. Instead of getting up and everything's going to be a hassle that day, because every time that we wake up like that, the day's absolute crap.
Right.
And but when we wake up and say like, or if that happens, we can just go take a shower, change the electrons around our body, and then come back out and decide you're going to have a good thought. Because you can, whatever you start the day and end the day with is totally up to you every moment and every second. So having that emotional component being like handled in an appropriate way has helped. I've seen so many people have huge transformations. I had a woman who had this red spot, blotch on her leg. And I said, do you know how you got that? And she said, no. And I said, was it always that size? No. And I said, well, how was it when you first remember seeing it? She goes, oh, the size of a 50-cent piece. And I said, oh, well, it was like maybe like 7 inches long. She had that moment. And when she had that moment about 6 months later, it was only the size of maybe 2 or 3 inches long, but she also had the opportunity to go for a healing in Costa Rica also. And when she went, so that she came back revitalized, she asked me if she could have any alcohol when she was there. I said, it costs you a lot of money to work with me, and I said, why would you want to start all over again just for a couple drinks? Is it worth it? And so I have a beautiful picture of her on top of some mountain as she climbed with her arms up and great, she was 52 years old and she looks like 30. And she goes, and she's never looked back. She has been, progressing, and she made a choice on that trip. So it was a healing trip for her. But the health part's got to be mental, physical, emotional, spiritual. You have to have that balance, in that piece.
That's huge. That's huge.
Dr. Pat, super interesting. Someone on Instagram just mentioned that's deep when a person's disposition habits change, first show through their face, eyes, etc. And this is one of the things I love about traditional Chinese medicine and putting those two together, the two being chiropractic and acupuncture, although, as you know, there are multiple, divisions within acupuncture. Both of those, particularly chiropractic, has come a very long way. I mean, you mentioned when you were thinking about going into it, you thought it was a quackery, right? That's kind of the what was said about it. Right? I see quite a bit of value between both systems, right? Traditional Chinese medicine and Eastern, if you will, because I do think it's the best sort of organized, written down of the indigenous medicines, right? You can see it in a lot of places. My grandmother was, the doctor of the village, if you will, right? And there was a lot of similar practices that to engage in. Where do you see the future of both practices going? Because I'm hoping there is a crossover between Western medicine and Eastern medicine for the benefit of everybody. Where do you see that going? Do you see the future is bright, or are you concerned?
I don't think they're going to. I think, acupuncture parlays well with chiropractic. And it depends upon how learned the practitioner is, right? And so and the piece about that, I always found, I can remember when this teacher, he is alive and well in Miami, and his name is Dr. Shu. He's brilliant. And so Dr. Shu was my mentor in acupuncture. And he was talking about this relationship to the body and about where meridians cross in the body. And I'm going like, oh, oh my, it was like when this light goes on, like, oh, look at that. That's where most people have who have fat metabolism problems. That's where that point is directly on the back, which is if you put your hand behind you, it's about maybe 4 inches down on your back. And I'm thinking, wow, that makes sense. So anybody that had fat metabolism problems, had gallbladder issues and things like that, I always went to this one point. It's because all those organs that drain all cross in a meridian right in that same area. So if you can stimulate it, you can stimulate how the body functions and it can potentially function even better. But it's putting, it's like putting those pieces of the puzzle and putting the needles where they need to go, where they make sense. Go. So as far as the future, in Western medicine, Western medicine doctors don't have to take acupuncture training at all to put needles in people. And that is,
Oh,
did you know that? It's just
no,
like
I
it's
didn't
not.
actually.
No, they don't have to go to acupuncture school to do it. They can do medical. It's called medical, acupuncture. And so,
Oh,
and
wow.
so that's something. If your medical doctor, wants to do acupuncture on you, you should ask them where they went to school at. That would be an
Yeah.
important question. But
But the
for
other way doesn't exist, right?
no, you have to have the training, and then like in chiropractic,
Wow.
it's a standard procedure in chiropractic to do dry needling. And so,
Hmm.
but dry needling isn't putting it in a point per se. They're looking at points that are tender because you want them to break up that trigger point,
Hmm.
with the needle, and doing other therapies like that. But it was, and so the acupuncture, and there's pieces of because I have that knowledge that float really well with each other.
Yeah.
And and I've found that. I'm going back into practice in Richmond with this guy who's joining this practice. He's absolutely brilliant. I mean, super, 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 super brilliant. Um, and so we're adding between our billboard of what he does and I do, it's like, it's a complete, it's like, having monopoly and winning all the time. And
Yeah.
so it's a really great pleasure to work with somebody who has that expertise because I haven't, I still coach and I still will coach, but I'm going to funnel, more specifically who I spend my time with doing that. But I wanted to go back and do it, understand, um, and do what I did before. Because people have always asked me when I'm working on them, they go, "How do you know that?" And I just went, "I don't know. I learned it someplace." It's like one of those things
Mhm.
that, because when I studied chiropractic, I had all the chiropractic greats to learn from. They are all alive still. Some of the guys who were the first people who was thrown in jail for practicing
Right.
chiropractic and that type of thing. But I don't
Yeah.
think Western medicine is going to ever cross that. I mean, they're more tolerant, but I don't think you're going to ever see that like, hug, kiss, and let's go to bed together.
Yeah.
And that piece.
I
That's
would agree
something.
with that.
Yeah, I just think that there's that edginess about that. Um,
Yeah.
and because I just don't instead of saying like I think what I learned in chiropractic school is that anything's possible, you know, and and there's like, you have to understand what limits are. Then you have to say, like, well, how can I overcome that limit? And what is it that I could do that make that's even better so I can continue, and
No.
go out and, beat hoof, and get there. It's just like, why do people like to go into saunas? I mean, saunas are great for you, right? And, dry saunas especially, or infrared, they're good for you because it gets rid of toxins out of your system. If we really knew how toxic everything was, we would be horrified. You know, there's just not a lot of ways for us to get because a lot of things that are toxic that we've already been exposed to are in there. So you really want to minimize what the expression of that is.
Dr. Pat, I would love you to expand on that a little bit in terms of getting rid of toxins. You mentioned saunas, other ways that somebody is listening to this is like, wow, I would like to take that on. Like, what are some ways that they can access right now to get rid of toxins? But before you answer that, you mentioned Richmond. Are you talking about Richmond, Virginia?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, yeah, yeah. So my family's in Richmond, Virginia. So
Oh my God.
I'll have to. Yeah, I was there during December, end of December.
I was here
Clear.
too.
Were you? Okay.
Yeah.
Now that we've connected, I'll be able to next time I'm in town or come see the new practice and maybe
I love
grab.
it.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. Very
Oh,
sweet.
that would be wonderful.
Sorry, Chris. Shout out
It's
Detroit. Shout out Richmond.
oh my God. Totally outnumbered on this episode. I'm just about to just turn the camera off and say goodbye
Yeah,
and
no,
let you
no,
guys
it's
finish
okay.
up.
It's okay. But the toxins piece and it maybe kind of think about it in a way of like what would be your top three tips, if you will, right?
Well, you know, it's not a question, we're all toxic. The question is how toxic, and the
Mhm.
question is like, there's things that you can do. I do help people with a detoxification that is like a 10-day detoxification. They also make the detoxification program that I first learned into a 28-day one, but I would never let anybody first go, in trying to like change their diet because I want to set somebody up for success. I do not want to set them up for failure. And so, and like when you're detoxing, you shouldn't purge. I mean, for sure, you didn't never, ever, ever want to, get the liver to purge because the liver, when it can't handle the toxins in the environment, it will it'll get rid of them and it will try to put them someplace, ideally in the toilet. But if the molecules are too big, it will go in the intestinal tract. The molecules are small, it'll go through the kidneys to the bladder into the toilet. And so when the gut is injured, and a lot of people have leaky gut because they've eaten poor foods and lifestyle choices where I have not been high on their list or good ones, then what happens is those toxins keep on recycling and recycling and recycling again and again and again. And so when the liver gets overwhelmed, basically speaking, those toxins are stored in blood, brain, bone, and fat. So,
Mhm.
in order to get those out of your system, I've had people, people who are really overweight and they're heavy, a lot of times their body's so full of toxins that those toxins aren't going to release from blood, brain, bone, and fat and go jump into the intestinal tract because the intestinal tract is damaged because it's just going to recycle again. So,
Mhm.
getting that concept of like you've got to fix your gut to change your life is really important. So, there's ways to do that, and that would be one of the first things. Now, the toxins would have to depend upon what they are. There's a company that I know that's out of Cleveland, Ohio, that, makes a specific product that extracts 26 to 28 chemicals, known chemicals, and that includes like, lead, cadmium, mercury, you know, and the big four, plus all these other ones. And so, and then one of the things, for getting rid of toxins is get them out of your house. It's just like look at cleaning things that you use, and look up the side effects. Nobody cares if you can't pronounce them. I can guarantee you that. And even if you try to pronounce them, you could have like a Trivial Pursuit question, game. But the thing is to get them out of your house. If you're using dryer sheets, get them out of your house, throw them away. They're carcinogenic. If you have, plugins, whether whoever company it is, they're
Yeah.
carcinogenic. It's just like if you ever want to have a bad headache, walk into someone's house that has vanilla, in one of those, and it's just like it will make you sick. I had a client a year and a half ago that came down. I was talking to him, and I do a technique called kinesiology. And when I was like looking at a piece on him, and I said, "You got something wrong with your upper lung." On his right side. And he goes, "I've been having some pain up there. I thought it was because I was lifting and blah, blah, blah." Stage 4 cancer, and so it's just like you've got to get toxins out of your environment. You've got to go through your house. And it's just like if it's on, I have a great questionnaire. It's no right or wrong, but if you wrote anything on the questionnaire, then you have toxins in your house that you have to deal with. And get them out. Mold, for instance, it's the reason why you wash your fruits and vegetables is because they usually have mold on them. You've got to get rid of the mold or
Yep.
you're eating the mold. Most coffee, unless you buy it and you know the mold content, that you're drinking mold. It will make you sick. And
Absolutely.
also, like it'll become too acid and you have this whole intestinal thing going on, but you've got to fix your gut. You got it's just like, and there's prescribed way to do that. You have to, figure out what it is that is, and there's food intolerance tests. There's a colleague of mine who had a patient and she had bleeding from her intestinal tract for years. And then they finally said, well, there's nothing else. We don't know what else to do because that's in the box of the realm of what Western medicine does. And so he said, and she goes, well, what do you mean? She goes, we're going to have to put a bag in, right? She had 6 kids. And she goes, I can't play with my kids. I can't go swimming. I'm not doing this. And she went and looked for another situation that could fix it. And this colleague of mine did a food intolerance test on her, and he found that she had a huge intolerance to, never should eat it, put it in her mouth, was avocados. And everyone thinks avocados are like the hunky-dory food. Never cook them and never use the oil at high heat. You have to look at what the smoke point is. So this woman took the things out that were on that and never ate them again. And a year later, she had a perfectly healthy gut. If she would have listened to Western medicine, then she would be walking around even today with the bag, on her in order to be able to function. But to me, that's not living.
Yeah.
And,
Not at all.
and thank God that she had that, somebody who she found that could, that looked deeper, than what was, because my one mentor in chiropractic, he's no longer alive, but his name was Dr. Victor Frank. And so he always said, and he was from out west in Utah, and he always said, what you got isn't necessarily what you got. You've got to go upstream, especially in a staying time. It might look like you have this. You got to go upstream to find out what the source is and where the big problem's at. And you have to fix the big problem, or you're going to keep on put a Band-Aid on, and then a Band-Aid, you'll have to oh my God, I got to fix this part over here. And you'll be, a body full of Band-Aids.
Yeah.
And nobody
Yeah.
needs to live like that.
That's huge.
And that's, I mean, a lot of really good things in there, Dr. Pat. But the piece you just ended on, and that's a huge piece for me, and why I really appreciate TCM's perspective, right? Not looking at obviously the symptoms matter because that's what we feel. That's probably what's going to get you to ask the questions you need to ask. But looking at the overall pattern, right, and treating the overall pattern of the root rather than the Band-Aids of symptoms that are going on. I think if you're watching this as a replay, please go back and re-listen to that section right there, because I think that is what a lot of our audience can take away, which is fix your gut in the different ways in which you stated it can be done, and address that. Because I think from what I've seen personally from the most healthy pro athlete to just a normal corporate athlete, we call them anybody working a 9 to 5, you could have totally different expressions of health, but both have a poor gut health, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like totally an elite athlete, but then we see elite athletes, unfortunately drop all the time, and it's totally something that we don't really talk about or address at all. So thank you for addressing it that way and for presenting it that way for those that are listening. For me, I would love, you kind of answered your what you would tell folks to do, but we typically like to end with a bit of last take. If you didn't hear anything else, and maybe you're just hopping in here or you're scrolling through and you just got to this point right here, what would be the most important message you could leave with the audience?
Wow. I have a list. But
choices.
Yeah, I always think, you got to keep it simple, and since you have a choice of what you put in your mouth, it's just like you need to eat as clean as possible. And because your body recognizes things like, the simple things like butter, and then, buying butter from a grass fed. And I will caution everybody who's listening to this right now is that when you're looking at something that's grass fed, just because it's grass fed doesn't necessarily mean it's good for you. It has to be grass finished also. Because a lot of times they will take, if you're if you're into having, and eating meat, a lot of times they want to fatten up the cow before it goes to slaughter, and it's just like, so they will go back, in the last like couple weeks they will give it grain to make it really puff up, and so if it puffs up the cow, it also puffs you up. And I just want to also just note one other thing about that is that if you could put something on grain and it's supposed to kill insects, it's probably killing you also. I mean, it's just like you have to think about like years ago, what did they do? Insects were normal. It's like, and and you had to but they got out of control. But there's a reason there was an environmental instability somewhere going on that created a lot of the problems that we have with that. So always make sure you wash your vegetables, and that you don't eat them like unless you grow them yourself and you know what they've been sprayed with. But they spray, Roundup, glyphosate type things on vegetables before they go to harvest. And so it's that's I could tell you that's like if that's one big thing. And then my last thing on my list, that I always talk about and I repeat again and again and again and again is to hydrate. 50% of your body weight in water. And if you don't like the taste of water, then drink it out of a straw. If you don't like the taste of water, put lemon juice in it. No orange, and, no grapefruit, but lemon, lime.
That's great. That's great.
That's yes, so much good stuff there. I don't know if you have it off the top of your head, but I remember reading somewhere that was I think it was in the 90s, like 99 or 98% of breast milk tested positive for glyphosate.
Oh yeah. Do you know Ritz crackers?
Crazy.
I read a thing about how many parts per billion of in grains, that were loaded with, glycophosphates. I would never put a Ritz cracker in my mouth ever again or a Triscuit ever.
Wow.
And it's just like, and the thing is that when they farm, is this they have they have to have a buffer around all organic areas because there's also drainage of water that comes from other farms. So, if they really wanted to do something special, they would make all farming organic.
Yeah.
That would be, and they also, I always had this really great, I think it's a great idea, but, and people who I know who have bee farms, and I always think that they should have bee condos and people should support the bees by buying a condo. And then support it so that we can have, you have if we don't have bees, you can't have pollination.
Right.
And so that's like one of those components in the environment that, is important. And then, and don't buy honey. You want to buy raw honey. There's something that has nutrients that are still in it, nothing that has been processed. That'd be the big thing. Stay away from processed food.
Those are amazing, amazing.
I could go. I told you I had a list.
Listen, we may need to have you back on, Dr. Pat, because again,
I'd love to.
This was spot on. This is all of the stuff that we've been talking about consistently on the show, and you just came in and solidified all of the things. So we definitely appreciate it. Tell the people, because we want to be respectful of your time, tell the people where to find you, what you have going on, where they can kind of connect with you the best.
Well, if you're on LinkedIn, LinkedIn's a great place. If with the same tag as Instagram, which is Dr. Pat Boulogne, no punctuation, one word. And that's a good way to find me on both of those. My website is Health Team Network. And there's a health assessment, a science-based health assessment on the opening page about halfway down. There's also a microphone. So in case you want to ask me a question, you can tap on that microphone and I will get your question in an email format and I'll be able to answer you back. So what I've got going on is I'm launching a program for facial fitness. And so in that facial fitness, I'm teaching exercises to keep your face toned. It also helps reverse the signs of aging. I had an 81-year-old woman who did this program with me for 12 weeks, and there were only 9 weeks of exercises, but we did a lot of nutrition work and made recommendations for that. And we looked at how health. I have a health questionnaire assessment that assesses whether or not you're a candidate to do a detox, and also whether or not you what your quotient is for being able to handle toxins in the environment, and so, we went through this whole thing. Her results were absolutely mouth-dropping, astounding, and that she has jawline. She's got lines gone around her eyes, and she has tone because as we get older, we lose muscle tone in our face. She's regained muscle tone so that it was almost equal on both sides in as little as 9.5 weeks.
Wow.
And so we're taking that to market, and we are training people right now. Our program is 50% off because I want to get people in there and I want to see people have the opportunity to get the results that they deserve. And I'll be doing the exercises right along with everybody. And I have experts coming in for pro tips on my Pro Tip Friday that will be highlighting products that they use, that they help promote, that they perhaps sell, so that you can make better decisions about a good product that's out there that is that can help improve your health. And people wear their emotions on their face, and they also wear their age on their face. It's the first thing that people see. So the quality of the tone of the skin and the muscles below it are essential. You exercise the rest of your body for flexion, for having more, stability and more strength. You got to do the same thing with your face and your neck. It makes a huge difference for an outcome with it. So that's happening. And if anybody wants to know more about that, they can reach out to me on my website straight away. And it's called the 15-Minute Hollywood Facelift Without Surgery. And it's a facial exercise program that, you'll expect, it'll be a lot of fun and be a lot of giggles. And I'm hoping that we have some kind-hearted men in there too. And besides the women that have signed up for the course so far. And let's go.
Kobi said he'll be in there with you.
I'll be there, man. Trying to keep the face, keep the face.
Keep it looking good. Keep it looking good.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Pat, we appreciate you taking this time out. And like I said, we have to have you back for another episode, hopefully to dive even a little bit deeper. There were so many things we actually didn't even get a chance to touch on today. You and I had a conversation specifically about practitioners that don't make money, right? And I was like, you got to talk about that. We didn't even get a chance to talk about it. So maybe we'll save that for another episode, have you come back on and maybe dive into some of those types of things.
Well, I also have some camaraderie here with, Coach Kobi, it's like being, Detroit connection, Richmond, Detroit Lions,
I got
We got you double flanked, Chris.
I got it. Keep rubbing it in.
To the north and to the south.
We might have to push out that episode a little bit longer.
No, we're ready. We're ready.
Right?
Come on.
For real.
I mean, if let's say when Detroit goes to the Super Bowl, we have to have you back on.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Let's go watch. Let's go to the game.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that would be, hey, let's take a show there. Hey.
Vegas, right? Vegas?
Is it?
It's Vegas
this year?
Vegas
that's
this
close
year.
To me, so.
Yeah. Listen.
Yeah.
We figure out how to make it happen.
It's called an airplane.
Good one, Dr. Pat. Good one. But yes,
thank you everyone that joined us on social media.
Thank you.
Yes, Instagram. A lot of questions. We have to have you back on. Has some stuff on there that we didn't even address.
I'd love to know what they are.
We address it.
Yeah,
for sure.
We'll come back on. But Dr. Pat, thanks for the time.
Thanks.
And absolutely. And for everybody else that's watching, again, continue to like, subscribe. We love that you guys engage and jump on and get your questions answered. Again, we want to be a resource for you on the health and wealth side of things to make sure that you're designing a life that you don't need a break from. So until next week, everybody. Peace.
Peace.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Good Life.
If you enjoy this episode, please take a moment to subscribe and like our channel.
If you have any feedback or suggestions for future episodes, please leave us a comment down below.
If you're listening to the podcast audio version, we appreciate you just as much. Thank you for tuning into the Good Life Show.
We believe that everyone has the potential to live their best life, and we hope our show helps you get that one step closer to achieving your goal.
If you know someone who would benefit from our show, please share it with them, and thank you for your continued support.
That's it for another week's episode here on The Good Life. We'll see you next week for another inspiring conversation.
Welcome to the good life.